Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are taking a look at the ToolkitRC's M9. It is a multifunctional 600 watt 20 amp DC smart battery charger with voice prompt, customizable voice alerts, and customizable welcome screen. So on the top we have the 0 to 85 degree tiltable 2.4-inch color IPS wide angle display screen that'll clean up really nicely without leaving any scratches. It is also viewable even in direct sunlight. So we have a metal push to enter scroll wheel and the exit button. And in the front we have the XT60 output port. We have the balance port that supports 2 to 8S batteries, and we have the input and output 3-pin servo port for testing PPM, PWM, and S-bus receivers, and also to check ESCs. Simply use a pin to remove the cover to expose the input and output pins. Just like that. And we also have the 65 watt max USB-C and the USB-A fast charging ports. So on the right we have ventilation holes, and on the left we have the cooling fan. Now the cooling fan will come on at half speed when the internal temperature exceeds 45 degrees Celsius and will speed up to full speed once it exceeds 53 degrees Celsius. And in the rear we have the speaker grill. We have the spring-loaded micro SD card slot and a 256 megabyte pre-loaded micro SD card is provided. Now the micro SD card comes loaded with various language packs and a welcome screen bitmap logo. Now the welcome screen bitmap is customizable as well as the welcome audio greeting. Simply make a bitmap logo of your choice and save it in the logo folder with the file name logo.bmp. It will only support a BMP file with a resolution of 240 by 320 pixels. So grab the picture file you want to use, import it into Paint or whatever software that'll allow you to change resolution, and export it in the BMP file. Give it the logo.bmp file name and import it into the logo folder. If done successfully, it will show up in the welcome screen when the device is powered on.
Welcome to ToolkitRC.
The welcome greeting audio file can be also customized by replacing the bootup.wave file in the sounds folder. It will support only a mono wave file format, so plug it into a software like Audacity and export it in the mono format. Now it already comes with a default welcome greeting and several other greetings, but you can customize your own. And finally, we have the XT60 input power source port. The input voltage is 7 to 35 volts at a maximum current of 25 amps. So it can be powered by a 2S battery up to an 8S battery. You can also power it up using an AC power supply with an XT60 connector, such as the Hobby Porter's 24 volt power supply, or even an AC to 12 volt DC power supply. You could also power it up using your car battery out in the field.
Welcome to ToolkitRC.
Now the battery types it can charge are LiPo batteries, high voltage LiPo batteries, lithium iron, lithium ion, and lithium titanium oxide at 1 to 8S, nickel metal hydride at 1 to 20S, and lead acid batteries at 1 to 10S. Now the charging power is 0.1 to 20 amps at 600 watts. So there's plenty of power to charge up to 12 1500 milliamp 4S batteries at the same time using parallel charge boards. Just make sure the input power source can deliver. Okay, so let's go ahead and power it up, and I'm going to be using a 4S battery with the XT60 connector. So plug it in on the XT60 input port.
Welcome to ToolkitRC.
Okay, so right after the welcome screen, it'll take you directly into the charge interface where you can go ahead and start charging up your battery or your batteries. But if you wanted to check the voltage of this battery, simply plug it into the output port instead. So let's go ahead and plug it into the output port.
Welcome to ToolkitRC. Battery connected.
There you go, voice prompt for you, and it'll go through the same welcome screen whether you plug it in on the bottom or on the top. So you can do this even without an input power source. It will show you the voltage of the battery. So let me go ahead and tilt the screen a little bit, and there you go, voltage of the battery. But if you want to take it further, plug in the balance connector to the balance port on the charger to quickly check the individual cells and thus the overall health of the battery. Now, I like to keep my balance connector piggyback to the XT60 power cable so it doesn't dangle around while it's strapped onto the quadcopter. So kind of hard for me to plug it in. So to facilitate this, I'm going to be using a 4S balance extension cable. So what you want to do is plug in the balance connector to the leftmost pin on the balance port and make sure it's on there good. And as soon as I connect this, you're going to see that the individual cells will light up as well as the total voltage at the end of the balance connector. And there you go, individual cells and the total voltage. Now, you can go ahead and scroll the wheel, but nothing else will show up. And the reason why is because there's no input power source. So you are not able to check the resistance of the cells. So in order to check the resistance of the cells, you will need an input power source. But you can also go into the resistance mode, which long pressing the exit button will take you in. So long pressing the exit button.
Measure resistance.
As you can see, we're in the accessibility mode and we are in the measure resistance. So let me go ahead and enter by pushing the scroll wheel.
Input voltage is too low.
There you go. The lady has spoken and she is saying the input voltage is too low. And in our case, it is non-existent. So let me go ahead and exit out. And so in order to check the resistance or to start charging up battery, you will need an input power source. So I'm going to be using another 4S battery with the XT60 connector for the input power source. And it is now showing the input voltage on the top left corner as well. So now you can go ahead and check the resistance of the individual cell. So long pressing the exit button once again.
Measure resistance.
And entering on the scroll wheel. And scrolling left and right or right. And there you go. It just showed up. Takes a few seconds before the resistance of individual cells show up. So as you can see, the individual resistance of the cells. So before you start charging any battery with your brand new battery charger, you should go into the settings and configure the safety settings or the alarm settings. And on this charger, long pressing on the scroll wheel will take you into the settings.
Input settings.
And there's another voice prompt for you. Pretty cool, huh? So you can scroll over to where it says security settings and hit enter.
Security settings.
And here you can change the safety parameters. Now the internal temperature is set to 80 degrees by default at 80 degrees Celsius. That's good. External temperature set to 60 degrees Celsius by default. Safety timer is set to 200 minutes by default. Now that's a little bit too much in my opinion, because it usually takes me about 60 minutes or so to charge up a 1500 milliamp size battery. So I will set it to about 70 minutes or maybe slightly above that, like 75 minutes. So I'm going to scroll over.
Save time.
Hit enter. And I'll set it to about 75 minutes.
75 minutes.
Yeah, there you go. Voice prompt. Pretty cool, huh? And the safe capacity is set to 30 amps, and that is too much. Now, you can set the safety capacity to slightly above the capacity of what you are charging. So, for example, a single 1500 milliamp size battery, after flying it around and discharging it, some 600 or so milliamp, you can set the safety capacity to 1 amp, which is 1000 milliamps. So that should be more than enough. So hit enter and scroll down to 1 amp and press enter.
1 ampere hour.
There you go. Voice prompt again. But if you are charging, let's say, 6 of these batteries and at the same time using a parallel board, for example, which a lot of people do. Sometimes I do that out in the field as well. I would, however, prefer to charge individual batteries, so it'll put in exactly the same amount of milliamps that it exhausted. But in order to do so, you gotta multiply the used amps or milliamps. So on this case, let's say it wasted 600 milliamps in that flight. So times 6, which is going to take you to 3600 milliamps. So if you want to charge 6 batteries at the same time, you should set the safe capacity to, let's say, 4 amps, which is slightly above the 3600 milliamps that you wasted on all of those 6 batteries. Okay, so now that you know that this thing talks, has a voice prompt on everything, I'm going to go ahead and remove the micro SD card for the rest of the video so we don't get interrupted with the voice prompt. All right, guys, so here we are back at the charge interface without the micro SD card. So to begin charging up a battery, short press the scroll wheel to set up the charge. And at the top, you can go ahead and choose the type of batteries, as mentioned before, and one more called the UAV bat. Now, the UAV bat is a mode for various different types of DJI batteries with preset voltages. So if you are charging a DJI battery, it is all set and prepared for you. And in my case, we're charging a LiPo, so set it to LiPo. Next, you can go ahead and manually choose the number of cells from 1S to 8S, or you can set it to auto. And by setting it to auto, it'll automatically detect the number of cells according to the voltage of the battery. So next is the mode. You can go ahead and set it to charge, discharge, or storage charge, or storage discharge. I'm going to go ahead and set it to charge. Next is the end voltage or the target voltage, and in this case it is a 4.2 volt per cell battery, so 4.2 volts, but you can choose from 4.05 volts to 4.25 volts. Set it to 4.2 volts. Next is the charge current. Now the charge current is set to 3.8 amps by default. So you need to set it to the volume of the battery, which in this case is a 1500 milliamp size battery. So we need to set it to 1.5 amps. But if you have more than one of these batteries and you are using like a parallel board, for example, and you are charging 2 batteries, so you need to add 1.5 amps per extra battery. So 2 batteries will equal to 3 amps, 3 batteries will equal to 4.5 amps, right? So I'm charging just 1, so I'm gonna hit or select 1.5 amps. That'll be at the rate of 1C. You can go ahead and charge it faster by increasing the amperes, but that is not healthy for your battery that is being charged. So scroll over to start and hit start. It will give you a prompt screen, charge to 16.8 volts, which is correct. But if it is not, you can go ahead and hit cancel. And by canceling, it will take you back to the charge interface where you can make corrections. But if everything is correct, you hit OK, it will begin to charge the battery. There you go. So here you can see the input voltage, the power consumption, the internal temperature, the voltage of the target battery, the charge current, time elapsed, and the amount of charge so far, as well as the progress bar, which is kind of cool. And on the bottom gray area will be the individual voltage per cell, the ohms, and the status. Now, the individual voltage will show up if the balance connector is connected like I showed you before, and you should always connect the balance connector when charging your battery. But if it does not have a balance connector for some reason, your battery, you can still charge up the battery, but keep in mind that it is not balance charging, and thus the cells will charge unevenly and could cause the battery to heat up and potentially be hazardous, and it is also very bad for the health of the battery. So while it is charging, you can short press the scroll wheel to either change the charge current or to stop charging the battery. Now, once the battery is finished charging, it will stop charging or continue with a trickle charge according to the settings, and a voice alert or a audio alert will be sounded.
Quick charge complete.
So you can also discharge your batteries and storage discharge your batteries as well. Just short press the scroll wheel to enter into the charge mode. Here you can either choose to charge, discharge, or storage discharge or charge. So I'll go into the discharge mode. It will now ask you if you want to internally dissipate the energy or externally to like a discharge load. I will go ahead and choose internal. Now you can choose the end voltage. Default is set to 3.5 volts. You can choose from 2.7 volts up to 3.7 volts. I'm going to go ahead and go back to 3.5 volts, the default value. And now you can choose the discharge current. Default is set to 2 amps. You can choose from 0.1 amps to 3 amps. Set it back to 2 amps here. Now, once you hit start, a prompt will appear. You can either cancel or hit OK. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. There you go. It is starting to discharge. Now, because we have it set to internally dissipate the energy, as you can see, the temperature is rising pretty fast. And right on cue at 45 degrees Celsius, the low speed fan just kicked in. And once it hits the 53 degrees Celsius mark, the high speed will kick in. And that's the noise at the low speed. And there you go. Here's the high speed. and that is the fan noise at high speed. Now, while it is charging, you can hit enter on the scroll wheel to either adjust the current from 0.1 amps to 3 amps. Once again, I'll leave it at 2 amps. Or you can go ahead and choose to stop the discharge. There you go. Now the storage, charge, or discharge mode is basically the same as the discharge mode, but now the end voltage is set to 3.85 volts by default. And you also have the charge current as well as the discharge current. So if the voltage of the battery is lower than 3.85 volts, let's say, it will charge it up to the target storage voltage. But if you go into the input settings by a long press of the scroll wheel and change the input power type from adapter to battery and go back to the discharge or the charge mode, the recycle feature will now appear. It is a safety feature so that the recycle feature only works when the battery option is selected as the input source, and a rechargeable battery should be used as the input power source. Now, in this mode, the discharged energy from the target battery will be recovered into the input battery. It will also have a maximum input voltage, and the default value is 35 volts. You can go ahead and set it all the way down to 7 volt. I'm going to go ahead and set it to 16.8 since my input battery is a 4S battery. And I'm going to go ahead and hit start. It will prompt you whether to cancel or OK. I'm going to hit OK. And it is starting to recycle the energy from the target battery back into the input battery. Now, because it is not internally dissipating and it is recycling the energy back into the input battery, the temperature will pretty much stay constant. And you're going to notice that the target battery voltage will start to decrease because it is discharging, and the input battery voltage will start to increase because the energy is being recycled back into the input power source. So besides charging and discharging batteries, the M9 can also measure resistance as demonstrated earlier. Just long press the exit button. Here in the accessibility, you can measure resistance. Here you can also measure signals of PWM, PPM, and S-bus receivers. Here I'm checking out a PPM receiver with the FlySky transmitter. And here I'm checking out a S-bus receiver with the TX12 transmitter. Perfect for ruling out the receiver as the problem source. You can also test and change the signal output. For PWM, you have manual, auto 1, auto 2, and auto 3 settings, where the pulse width and cycle values can be changed. For PPM and S-bus, the pulse width value of each of the channels can be changed. You can also test ESCs as well. Choose the power output to power external devices like a soldering iron, or to power up a quadcopter with just a push of a button. Now this is one of my favorite features. Very handy when binding receivers already installed on a quadcopter. Okay, so get everything ready. Set the voltage and set the current put it on start, so you are ready to power up the quadcopter with the push of a button. Hold down the receiver binding button, and with a push of a button, power up the quadcopter and the receiver. Now just go to your transmitter and hit bind. Red light is flashing. Power cycle the quadcopter. And green light. Successful bind. The output voltage can be set all the way up to 35 volts. And as low as 1 volt. And the maximum current can be set all the way up to 20 amps. And as low as 0.5 amps. You can also check the USB charge port values. Now, long press the scroll wheel to enter into the settings. Here in the input settings, you can select the power from manual to auto and select the preset power from 1, 2, or 3. You can choose the power type from battery to adapter. Now remember to choose battery if you want to recycle the energy back into the input battery power source like shown before. And you can set the maximum power. The highest is 850 watts. The lowest is 10 watts. You can set the maximum current. Highest is 25 amps. Lowest is 1 amp. And set the voltage range from 7 volts to 35 volts. Now, we know about the security settings already, as demonstrated earlier. Next is the personalization. You can set the backlight brightness from 1 to the maximum brightness at 10. You can set the operational volume, low, medium, or high. You can set the announcement volume from low, medium, and high. You can also set the warning volume from low, medium, and high. Now, this is really nice that you can set different volume levels for different announcements and not just one volume level for all of the announcements. You can choose the language, and you can also choose the theme from light or dark. Now, dark looks really nice too. The battery selection when set to off will take you into the charge mode when the scroll wheel is short pressed. But when it is set to on, it will display the preset choices of selections you have created for your specific types of batteries, so you can quickly start charging or discharging your batteries. And by selecting new, you can create a new preset model. Continuous work enables or disables the continuous charging or discharging of the battery after the battery is replaced. And you can either end or trickle charge after the charge is completed. You can set the balance start voltage to balance the cells prior to commencing the full current charge to always -500, 400, 300, 200, or 100 millivolts. I always set mine to always. Set the parameters back to factory default settings here and check the ID and the software version. To upgrade firmware, connect the M9 to a computer with the provided USB to USB cable. Download the upgraded or updated file from the ToolkitRC website called the app.upg file and overwrite the existing file in the drive. So there you have it, guys, the M9 from ToolkitRC. So is it better than the previous generation ToolkitRC chargers? Yes, I would say it definitely is. It has more power, better cooling, a tiltable 2.4-inch color display screen. The features are refined and easier to use and navigate, and the voice alerts are customizable, as well as the welcome screen bitmap. So if you want to check out the M9 for yourself, the link to purchase is down below. So thank you so much for tuning in and watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you again next time.
Welcome to ToolkitRC.
Always. Ampere. Announce volume. Balance start voltage. Battery selection. Charge current. Charging completed. Mavic 2. Mavic S. Max current. Measure resistance. Quick charge complete. Work completed.